Do you seek the freedom to pursue greater meaning and purpose in your life? Is there something that you're passionate about that you'd like to support by giving time, talent, or money? Do you seek a level of financial freedom to live an ideal life as you uniquely define it? Welcome to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to helping you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most.
Welcome, friends, to episode number 2 of the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier. My name is Mike Bernard. I am the host and moderator for their show today, and I'm so glad to have you joining us. I am a certified financial planner. I've been friends and a collaborator with Jeff Bernier for many years, and I'm so thrilled to be part of this project because I know Jeff has the unique ability to balance high-quality wealth management advice with his calling to help people live a life of meaning and purpose. In fact, that's what the Money and Meaning Show is all about. Last month, we provided an introduction to Jeff's journey that led to the creation of this show and what he hopes to deliver through the Money and Meaning Show. This episode, we're going a little bit deeper. We'd like to offer some thoughts and a process to help you uncover what matters most. Jeff Bernier is the founder, president, and chief investment officer of Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, a wealth management firm in Alpharetta, Georgia, a suburb of the greater Atlanta area. Before we dive in, Jeff, any thoughts from last month's episode before we transition into a discussion of what matters most?
Yes, thanks. So thanks again, Mike. You know, one of my core values is I'd like to be a lifelong learner, and I just know these shows will be an opportunity for me to learn and grow. And so I'm hoping that these conversations that you and I have will be a collaboration with our audience so that we can work together to sort of flesh out what brings meaning and purpose to our life. And again, as we talked about last month, how do we marry that with high quality wealth management? So again, I'm just excited about the spirit of partnership that we have both with each other and with our audience, and looking forward to our collaboration.
That's right. So we kicked it off last month. We're going a little bit deeper today. So last month, we gave a general introduction of what money and meaning is really all about. This month, we want to have a discussion about a transferable process of uncovering what matters most. Tell us a little bit about why that's important to you, Jeff.
Yeah, I love quotes. I love simple quotes. And I think the reason I'm attracted to them is I have a difficult time editing. So, I can say with a lot of words what you could probably say with a few. But one of my favorite quotes is from Goethe. He said, "Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least." And so I know you're familiar with Stephen Covey. Yep. Most people are familiar with The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
One of my favorites.
A classic book. And as a matter of fact, 2 of the habits in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People were habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. And habit number 3 is put first things first. And so that's really what uncovering what matters most is really kind of about. Many people have probably seen the illustration that Stephen Covey used to do. He used to take this cylinder, this clear cylinder, and he would have rocks, pebbles, sand, and water. And he would put the sand in and the pebble in, and he would pour the water in, and then he would put the rocks in on top, and the water would splash out and not be held in the container.
That's right.
Then he would have another container, and he would put the big rocks in first. Then he would put the pebbles in, and the pebbles would sift down into the rocks. Mm-hmm. Then he would pour the sand in, and it would settle into the pebbles. And then he would pour the water in, and it fit perfectly without splashing out. The idea that he was trying to communicate with that excellent illustration is you've got to put the big rocks in first. Mm-hmm. You've got to get the big things in first. And so the big things are your values and your purpose and those things that matter most. So the idea of what matters most has resonated with me for years. I remember early in my career, I actually went to a time management workshop that Franklin Covey hosted, and the name of the workshop was What Matters Most. So just from an early part of my career, it became clear to me that we ought to, be a little bit more conscious of what matters most.
But isn't it obvious to folks? I mean, the folks listening to this, isn't it obvious what matters most?
Well, you would think so. But, I found in my own life, when I reflect back on, many of my actions, they're not always consistent with what matters most to me. And, I don't think I'm alone in this. What matters most to us can often get co-opted by society, our jobs, our family, and even our desire to be comfortable. Many of us are kind of walking around in this unconscious state, if you will, and it feels normal. I read another book years ago, and he talked about how Coast Guard rescue personnel, when they first encounter a victim, the first job is to determine their level of consciousness. And they have a phrase that they use called alert and oriented times zero, which means they're totally unconscious.
Whoa.
Well, it seems to me many of us are walking around unconscious. We're just kind of drifting around with, whatever society or our family or some of these external forces. So the goal here, again, is to be thoughtful about evaluating what matters most.
Evaluating and then living intentionally. So is it safe to say what you're trying to do is get people to slow down and get conscious about what matters most to them?
Yes, that's it exactly. So that's why I call what we do purpose-driven wealth management. And why I said last show, and we'll say again, that it is a head and a heart journey. So we want clients to get their financial actions and resources in alignment. You used that term earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We want to help them get their actions and resources in alignment with what matters most. But you need to know what matters most.
Yeah.
And so, again, to me, to do comprehensive, holistic, high-quality wealth management, that's an important conversation to have.
I can't express to you enough what a unique approach that is. And one of the things that does make the Money and Meaning Show different is Jeff and I were both practitioners. We're not in the media business. And so Dave Ramsey.
That's probably obvious.
That is probably obvious. Dave Ramsey, he's not a financial advisor. And Jim Cramer is not, he's not a financial advisor either. And so trying to align your behaviors, your intentional behaviors, with what really matters most in life and aligning your finances, that's really what it's all about. So you speak a lot about creating the freedom and the capacity to pursue a vision of a meaningful life. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, let's talk just a moment about my definition of this peace and freedom. And believe me, I certainly don't have all the answers. I'm just now learning some of the good questions. But I guess over the last several years, I've actually become more comfortable not knowing some things. So I guess that's okay. But I do believe that true freedom only comes when we're authentic, when our true self comes out, when we take the mask off. So we all wear costumes, we're successful financial advisors, or we're super moms, or we're doctors or CEOs, or whatever the case may be. And so I think one of the central tasks of life is to uncover who we really are and live that. And so I really think you only have true peace when you are authentic in who you are and you're okay with who you are. But having said this, I do believe we're all created for a purpose. We're all created by our Creator with a purpose. And I believe that those things that you love to do and those things that you were gifted to do and those things that serve others are a pretty good hint of what your purpose is.
Yeah.
So if you love to do it, you're great at doing it, and it provides value to others, I believe that's a pretty good hint. Another one of my quotes, if I could do another quote quickly here, is, and I've heard this attributed to several people. The one that I think is the most accurate is Harold Thurman. And this quote is, "Do not ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do that." Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
Wow.
So really, our wealth management approach is about encouraging people to uncover what makes them come alive and to get their financial resources and actions in good order, to create the capacity to go pursue that.
Love it. I love it. So how can we begin that process of uncovering what matters most and what makes someone come alive?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of paths to this journey. And as I mentioned in our last show, we're not licensed therapists and we're not counselors, but it's been my experience there are some common things that people can do that can help in this journey, and some common themes. And the first one is, it'll probably be revealed over time. This rarely comes as a bolting, a lightning bolt in your brain. Secondly, it's not a linear process. I mean, there'll be a lot of detours as you start trying to uncover what you really care about. Oftentimes, I believe solitude and contemplation is really, really important. And that's the most unnatural thing for us to do today. We're just bombarded with data and information, and it's hard to take space.
Life is fast right now with technology. There's just constant interruptions, distractions. It seems normal to us, but it really interrupts.
That's right.
This thinking, this conscious level of thought about planning where you want to go, what you want to do in your life.
That's exactly right. So I think it requires some level of contemplation and solitude.
Yeah.
A coach could be helpful, might not be always necessary, but a coach could be helpful in this endeavor. And then finally, it's really just about asking good questions, asking yourself good questions. And I'm a big journaler, so I like to journal. And so asking yourself good questions and journaling can be also very helpful.
Well, I mean, that's part of the genuine journey is to just ask yourself. I mean, you mentioned it already. You said as you're getting older, you're a little more comfortable not knowing certain things.
That's right.
But it's really about knowing what questions to ask so you have that self-exploration. So what are some good questions to ask?
Yeah, so, discussing a few helpful questions is really what I had in mind when I was thinking about this episode. And I learned many years ago that true discovery requires going into an engagement without blinders on. It's easy for us as professionals to go into a meeting with an agenda.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that we have to do as professionals when we ask these questions to our clients or prospective clients, or when we're sitting next to the river by ourselves and asking ourselves these questions, we have to come at it with a clean slate of paper.
That's right.
And it's difficult. So so that's sort of the first thing. So really, these questions are really so people can self-discover. Everyone has within themselves the answers. I believe, at least through prayer and maybe meditation and some received wisdom. But it's really about getting, quiet, getting present with yourself and asking these questions. And I didn't come up with these questions, by the way. We talked about being a lifelong learner. I mean, I'm a student of workshops and seminars and coaching programs, and these questions came from George Kinder, who is a life planner in our industry, and Dan Sullivan, who is the founder of this Strategic Coach program. So these are some really good questions to ask. So the first question that I would ask is, if you had all the money you needed, how would you live your life? Sometimes I'll say something like, if you had $30 million sitting in the bank, safe and liquid, and no debt, how would you live your life? Would it be different? What would you do?
What are some common responses there, common themes to this question?
Yeah, so this is a fun question,
Yeah.
obviously. Many people have asked themselves, if I won the lottery, what would I do? But oftentimes people really hadn't thought much about this question. But usually you'll get a number of different types of responses. And, oftentimes they revolve around family. I would help my family. I would make sure my kids are well educated. I would make sure my kids, got off to their first careers successfully. I'd want to leave legacies to my children. Oftentimes it is about society. I want to be a giver, and I want to be a river and not a reservoir, and I want to influence these causes that mean something to me. Oftentimes it's about fun. I want to travel. I want to see the world. I want to, oftentimes it is I would quit tomorrow. I would go to work and I would tell the boss, I'm gone. Sort of go jump in the lake money, as some people might say. So it's really all over the board. But what's good about the question is it does give you clues early in a conversation about what really matters.
That's right.
And so that's why I like the question.
If you were liberated, really, financially, what would you do? And
Right.
and then there's some freedom, and it actually gives you some space, some permission to get authentic. All right, keep going.
Yeah, so that's question number one. So the second question, and remember, you can do these yourself, and we can talk about that, but when we meet with a prospective client, that's the very first question I ask them. I ask them, other than, kind of why are you here? But as we start having a substantive conversation about wealth management, that's my very first question.
Love it.
The second question is not as pleasant. And so it says, okay, you don't have the 30 million anymore. Easy come, easy go. You have the resources you have now, and you go to the doctor as a couple. If you're married, you both go to the doctor together, and the doctor says, I've got great news and I have terrible news. The great news is you're going to be in perfect health, guaranteed for the rest of your life. No change. The bad news is you got 5 years. In 5 years and a day from now, you're going to pass away painlessly together.
Wow.
If you knew with certainty that that was your life circumstance, how would you spend those 5 years?
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and so it's an uncomfortable question. And one of the things I learned in the halftime was, as humans, we like the status quo. We would rather not change. Comfortable is good for a human being.
Yeah.
But in order to really pursue your best self, sometimes you have to get uncomfortable. And we don't change until we have a crisis sometimes. We don't go to the woods and ask these questions until, a loved one is sick, or we're sick, or we lost a loved one, or we have a financial catastrophe. And so what these questions are designed to do is to run that fire drill before you have the fire.
Oh,
So
wow.
this uncomfortable question, you got 5 years to live, you're going to be in perfect health, you're going to pass away together, how would you spend that 5 years? Gives us pretty good clues on what's really important.
Is there ever alignment between how someone answers question number 1 and question number 2?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, many times there is.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not so, I don't presume that this is the first time people have had these deep thoughts. I mean, people are, have these conversations with themselves, and so they're oftentimes not the first time they're asked, but they might be the first time they were asked by a financial advisor.
Sure.
However,
Sure.
So it's a pretty uncomfortable question, but it does give you some clues.
So question number 3.
Yeah. So for those clients that are uncomfortable with question number 2, they'll really like question number 3. So now you go to the same doctor, and it's not 5 years; it's 24 hours.
Whoa.
So you don't have 5 years to live; you've got 24 hours. And really, the question is not about how you would spend the 24 hours. I mean, based on their first 2 questions, they got a pretty good idea how they're likely to spend the 24 hours. But the real question is, what did you not get to be or see or do or experience that saddens you or is a regret?
So that's kind of retrospective there, looking backwards at the life you lived. So how do people usually respond to that?
Yeah, it is looking back to the life you lived, but it's also looking forward at what you're not going to get to be or see or experience. And usually that question, for most of the people that we serve, ends up being about family. I'm not going to get to see my grandchild graduate from high school. I'm not going to see my son get married. I'm not going to, those kinds of things. But whatever it is, it does give us some pretty good indication of some of these things that really matter to people. So rarely have anyone say, I wish I'd stayed at the office longer. Man, I wish I had finished that project for my boss.
Right.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah.
So, it is common things.
Got it. What other questions would you start with as you're trying to help someone uncover really what matters most?
Yeah, another question that I've used that I think is helpful is one I learned from Dan Sullivan at the Strategic Coach about 20 years ago. And this is more of a planning sounding question. So the question is, if we're sitting here 20 years from today and reflecting back to today, what had to happen personally, professionally, and financially for you to feel good about what you've accomplished?
Yeah.
So what does success look like to you 20 years from now? So I'll normally say I'll confirm the age. Or so again, if you're doing this for yourself, just write down your age. So I'd write down 54 for me.
Okay.
And then so the question would be, at 74, and I'm looking back over the last 20 years, what had to have happened for me to feel good about where I am professionally, financially, and personally? So that's more of a financial planning sounding
Exactly.
question.
That's a
Yeah.
great question. But now that starts getting into the area of financial planning. You're turning that to what things do you need to do, what would need to happen.
That's
Yeah.
right. Some people have interesting reactions to these questions.
Yeah.
Generally, they fall into 2 camps. Some prospective clients will say, man, this is the strangest wealth management firm I've ever encountered, and I'm not sure I really want to go there. But others say, wow, this is a firm that's really interested in understanding me and understanding what matters most. But for our podcast today, again, we're encouraging others to do this.
Yeah, so can people ask these questions of themselves right now? What's the right venue to start doing this?
Yeah, I certainly believe our listeners can go to the woods or go to the park or the creek or wherever they have an opportunity to be in nature and listen and journal their thoughts. Ask these questions and journal your thoughts. And again, try to go into it without too many preconceived notions and just sit and listen to how you think about these things. But no, this would certainly be a good way to start. Having said this, I think a guide could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I know it certainly is in my life. I mean, it's oftentimes helpful for other people to ask me questions like this. So as I mentioned, many of us just never take the time to do it, and so a coach can help you with the discipline around actually having a process to do this. But no, absolutely, I think that people can go do this on their own at some level.
What's the danger in trying to pursue financial success without asking yourself these sorts of questions, or having a coach help you with these sorts of questions? What are the dangers out there?
Well, I think a big danger is you've got to know your why.
Yes.
Especially when you get in the wealth management space, because life changes and things change rapidly, and you need a finish line. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't have used that term because really I don't really believe there is a finish line. It's really about joy and peace today, and we're just pursuing a state of joy and peace. But you've got to have a vision of where you're trying to go, which gives you the encouragement to sit through tough times or to make difficult decisions, be uncomfortable today so you can be comfortable later. Mm-hmm. If you don't have something that you're pursuing, that can be difficult, especially in bad markets, as an example.
Well, I was just going to say, what tremendous value that is. Yeah, you may have thought about these questions before that Jeff just shared, but likely you haven't been asked them by your financial advisor, and you haven't explored what that means in your financial life with someone before. And I just, again, would want to underscore what a unique approach that is, because when you can align what those rocks are
right
with how you're making decisions about your money, folks, that's where the magic really happens.
Yeah, that's it. That's it exactly.
All right. So there you have it. There's a series of questions for you to ponder. Get out in the woods, as Jeff said, as you begin discovering what really matters to you most. Thank you so much for joining us for episode number 2 of Money and Meaning with Jeff Bernier. We hope you found it time well spent, and look forward to you joining us next time, where Jeff will be discussing the great goals of life. Jeff, any final comments before we sign off?
Yeah, I just want to stress, as I mentioned last episode, we're not licensed counselors, we're not therapists, we're not life coaches. I just believe that wealth management done with excellence requires a deep understanding of our clients, and this process can be helpful really to anyone as they begin the journey of uncovering what gives life meaning uniquely for them. So I want to thank our listeners for joining us on the journey.
Yeah, that's right. All right, on behalf of Jeff Bernier, my name is Mike Bernard. We'll see you next time for Money and Meaning with Jeff Bernier.
Thank you for listening to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to help you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions for Jeff or Mike or comments on the show, feel free to reach out to us at moneyandmeaning@tandemgrowth.com, or you can find us on the web at www.tandemgrowth.com.